Still Moving Osteopathy, helping you move better, feel better, sleep better, live better. We bring out the best in you.
Well, good afternoon, everybody. It is an honor to be with everyone this afternoon. And when I listen to your mission, and when I look at the organizations that you support, I see a very distinct tie between the Barrie Police Service and all of you that live in this fabulous community. So thank you very much for having me today. And we do have a PowerPoint presentation. So if we start with the first slide, just to give you a little bit of history of the Barrie Police Service. You will see that the population of Barrie in 1941, so none of us were around in, I think, 1941. You don't know? Okay. But our population was about 500 at that time. And we looked at mostly from Great Britain, so England, Ireland, and Scotland. But if you went forward just over 10 years, in 1853, the Barrie area had their first, and I'm going to use the term one-man police force with Chief Rogers. He was hired as the county constable for Simcoe County, and he spent over 25 years in that role. Fast forward to the early 1950s, the population for Barrie at that time was just over 12,000, and the cost of policing was about $60,000 per year, and the 12-member detachments were making just under $2,000 a year. Some of you remember, in 1985, the Barrie Police Service with other first responders ensured the safety of our citizens during the F4 twister. And if many of you have had the opportunity to drive by 110 Fairview, you can see our new Barrie Simcoe County Emergency Services campus, and it's looking really good. And I'm very excited. We will be moving into our new campus by mid-March. So we'll be in there operating out of the new facilities. So we're sharing it with the paramedic services and Barrie Police, and there is a footprint of Barrie Fire also with the communications piece. So if we look at what our mission, vision, and values, and I've spoken to that very, very briefly already, I certainly see that there is a connection with many of the organizations in our city to make our city safe and secure. So this is something that has been developed over the last 5 years and is part of our strategic plan. If we look at a couple of Barrie Police quick facts or things that are happening in our community. So last year, we responded to almost 74,000 calls for service. And those calls for service can be anything from, we have vehicles parked in a wrong area, to somebody has stole something from my vehicle, to a community services incident where we're in our schools assisting those with programs in our schools, or to some of the major incidents that we've seen in 2019. We arrested laid over 7,000 criminal code charges, along with some other federal legislation. Our Barrie Courthouse, which you'll see not too far from here, we had 6,400 prisoners through our system and were processed there. What I think is quite interesting, we look at Statistics Canada, and when we think of the Census Metropolitan Area for Barrie, I'm very proud to say that we work with our partners in South Simcoe and the OPP, and when we look at that Census Metropolitan area, you will note that this area has been considered either first, second, third, or fourth safest area in Canada since 2012. So we're very, very fortunate where we live. And part of that goes to, and I'm not saying it, it's the police services that are doing that. That is all of the service providers that are here. It's about the citizens that are here. And when we look at some of the calls for service that we're responding to, approximately 80% are non-criminal in nature. So those are dealing with issues that are quality of life and disorder. And then the other approximately 20% are criminal in nature. But where we're very, very fortunate, when we look at Statistics Canada and how we fit across the country, we have the highest clearance rate across the country. So that means the criminal investigations that we're involved in, 74% of them are cleared. So it's something that I'm very proud of. One of the things that we have focused in on with some changes in legislation recently in regards to the use of cannabis in our community, we have increased our education, our awareness, our enforcement, which includes our ride spot checks throughout the city. So last year we conducted almost 150 ride spot checks lanes, and we stopped over 25,000 cars. And in those ride spot checks, we are still seeing people that are making the decision to get behind the wheel of a car, whether they're impaired by alcohol or impaired by drugs. So we will continue to promote this and get the messaging out. But I'm sure all of you have seen the messaging, all of you. How many people have been stopped in a ride spot check? Okay. And you know what is really important? We're hearing positive results for us doing that. It's not a negative thing, but we're still seeing people that we're arresting for driving offenses associated to drugs and alcohol. One of the other services that we offer at the Barrie Police is criminal records checks. So there has been an increase in employers or volunteer organizations where if you're working within the vulnerable sector, that you have to get a criminal records check. And last year we saw 12,000 people go through our system. So the reason that I've placed it up there as just a reminder that we've made some changes in 2020 for our criminal records check. If you are a volunteer, we used to do it free of charge. We are now doing through an online process, and the processing fee associated with that is $12, but it helps in regards to being efficient and effective. The turnaround is much quicker. So just be aware of that. We respond to many community incidences and support many community events, almost 2,500 of those. One of the things that we do focus in our policing response is, and I think when Chuck and I had a conversation on what did you wish to hear about, was some of the concerns that have been raised in our community. So before I began, my apologies, I should introduce Sergeant Ange Butler. Many of you may have seen her in our community response in our downtown core, but she's recently been transferred and she now holds the position of executive officer. But she was very instrumental over the last couple of years focusing in on problem-oriented policing projects. So it's very proactive policing and crime prevention initiatives where we're working directly with those in the community that are looking for support. We use social media to garner support in some of the projects that we were doing in our downtown. We also focus on traffic and pedestrian safety, and that's usually through targeted and active enforcement, also having the element of education and awareness. So we continue to work with the problem-oriented policing initiative, and I will speak to shortly about our new neighborhood policing model. But when you look at what our core police services are, this is based on the Police Services Act, and we will see some changes, but not specifically in the core of the work that we do. So it's listed there. We talk about victims of crime, law enforcement or emergency response, public order and maintenance, crime prevention. But really, the work that we do, we ensure that the safety and security of all persons and property in the province of Ontario, which is its provincial legislation. We also safeguard the fundamental rights and freedoms that are guaranteed under the Human Rights Code and the Canadian Charter of Rights. Most importantly, it is essential that we cooperate between the community organizations, our community, and the Barrie Police Service. We need to ensure that we respect victims of crime and we understand what their actual needs are. And one of the most recent changes that we'll see is that the police service and the Police Services Board needs to be representative of the community that we actually serve. And we will see some changes in the legislation over the next year. To give you a highlight, and I'm sure everybody can read that, right? I'm looking at it and I know what it represents, but but we'll have a hard copy for everybody to look at it. But the Barrie Police Service is broken up into 8 pillars. Operations, which are usually what everybody in the room would see, are cruisers that respond to emergency calls for service, those that are working downtown in our community response. We have our operational support, so that includes the coverage out in the bay over the summertime with our marine, our traffic enforcement officers, our tactical support unit. So those are units that support the front line or support the operational services. We have our investigative services, so those are our detectives, whether they're working in the crimes against persons unit or the homicide unit. And you will see that as services and organizations modernize, we are no different. We have a phenomenal IT department that ensures that our devices that we use, whether they're from our radios, from our telephones to our mobile devices that are in our vehicles, are top notch. And we're moving into our new campus, which I can't speak enough about, but we have a top of the line communications center that is going to be ready and prepared to respond to the legislation in regards to next generation 911. So our IT department looks after everything from big to small. We have human resources, we also have a finance department, and then on the right-hand side, and I'm sure you can't read it because it's in such small print, we have our executive services. And that is things like professional standards, our auditors, our strategic planning. So you see we have an administrative side of the house and we have the operational investigative side of the house. And I'm very pleased to say that we have 241 sworn officers and 118 civilian officers. And when we look at the changes that we have made most recently in our HR department is the implementation of a civilianization strategy. So what we have done is we have assessed all of the positions within our organization, and we've identified positions such as the strategic planner, our school resource officers in our elementary schools, our fleet supervisors, our communications center, our corporate communications coordinators, so our media relations. We've looked at positions that have traditionally been filled by police officers that have gone to the Ontario Police College, has been accredited there, have all the use of force options. And we've looked at those some of the positions that, or all of the positions I've listed and more, and we have redeployed police officers to frontline duties and replaced them with civilians. And we have individuals that have the technical skills that are coming to us, already have the education in their area of expertise, and we have seen an increase in organizational effectiveness, and we have looked at the potential of some cost savings with the new positions that we have had. So that is one of the things that we have worked on since 2014. One of the new things that we implemented at the end of last year, and we're into a full deployment model with our neighborhood policing model. So as we have seen, many of you have been living in the city for many, many years. Our current population is approximately 150,000. By 2031, we will see an increase to our population of 60,000. So that's like plopping the size of Aurelia into Barrie. So we needed, as a police service, to be prepared in regards to how we're going to respond to the increase of people on our roadways, people living in our community, people working in our community. So as a result of this, we have divided the city up in a different manner than we have had before. So we're using a model, neighborhood policing or community policing approach, where we're deploying frontline staff that are focusing in on a specific geographic area of the city. So there's more attachment to the things that are happening in the community, attachment to the businesses in the community, attachment to some of the concerns that residents are raising in the community. So there is certainly an attachment that we hope to see, and we're monitoring and evaluating the deployment here. We're hoping that we do not have, when there are emergency calls for service, we don't have officers ping-ponging all over the city. They're staying in their geographic area, so our response time to emergency calls are much more efficient. And it gives the opportunity to look at some of the root causes in specific neighborhoods and how we're going to assist the community in addressing some of those root cause. So the bottom line is we want the residents in the community to recognize their neighborhood officers, and when we want our officers to have ownership to their specific neighborhood. And when I've spoken about our campus, when we do move into our campus, our headquarters is going to be in the center of the city. So we're hoping that that helps with our neighborhood model also. I have spoken about our strategic plan a couple of times, and I'm very proud to announce this is our 2020 to 2022 strategic plan. It is a requirement of our Police Services Board to have a strategic plan that addresses the core of our business, but it also addresses the other needs in our community. So to develop the strategic plan, we took a very collaborative approach. We had focus groups, we had community services, we had strategic planning sessions, and we determined what our specific direction was going to be for the service over the next 3 years. So one of the most important things to a success of an organization, whether it's not-for-profit, it's in the public sector, it's in the private sector, is really about our resources. So our people are our most important resource, and we will continue to work with the people in our community and the officers and the members that are part of our service. So we have condensed from previous years, back in the early to and mid 2000, we had about 14, and then we reduced it down to about 10, and our last strategic plan was 5 priorities. We've condensed it down now to 3 priorities. And so it focuses in our core business, which is the first one, crime prevention, community safety, and law enforcement, and that reinforces our mission to enhance our community by providing professional, accountable, and sustainable police service. And I have spoken greatly, and I may have used different terms, but our second one is community engagement and collaboration, because we can't do this alone. We can't respond to the needs in the community ourselves. We need the community to support what we're doing, and we need to support some of the other organizations and agencies that do work to make sure that we're a safe and secure community. Also, the last one is kind of a wraparound in regards to doing all the things we need to do. We need to have an organization that supports sustainability and excellence. And when we look at the cost or the economics of community safety, we have to make sure that we continue to strive to identify areas where we can save and minimize the cost that is placed on the citizens in our community. I spoke about our technology. We need to ensure that we are modernized, and we're catching up in that regard. And we are using evidence-based techniques to ensure that we're not in the community thinking anecdotally we're doing the right thing, but there's evidence to prove that this is a model or this is a program that needs to be part of our community. So I mentioned we did a little bit of research and community service surveys and some focus groups, and these were the areas that were broken down into where we should spend our time and efforts. So we look at safety, so we need to ensure that we address crime prevention, community safety, traffic safety, human trafficking, and intimate partner violence. And part of the issues that we're seeing in our community, there are many that are homeless or near homeless, and that affects the safety of those individuals, but it also affects the safety of others in our community. So we know, and we have seen in our community the health of our community. So we have seen substance abuse or misuse, whether it's opiates or methamphetamines. We see from our calls for service, a huge percentage of our calls for service impact those that are suffering from some type of mental health. And we are focusing in on the development of our children, because the children are the priority for the future. We've seen some food insecurities in our city, and we know what a great food bank we have that supports those that are most at risk. And then we look at our community. What were the important things? Poverty and income was one that was identified. Those that are at risk, how can we provide support to them? And that collaboration, service integration, so we're in coordination, so we're not doing the same things in our different pillars of responsibility, and how we can help those that are coming to Barrie as a newcomer. So those are how we've broken things down. And I know that many of you have been aware of some of the work that has been done through the city and the Barrie Police in regards to what's happening in our downtown. We work very closely through a program called Connected Core. We also, as a police service, initiated several years ago Collaborate Barrie, where we have multiple services agencies meet twice a week for those that are at elevated risk, so we can go out and assist them prior to them entering into the criminal justice process. So we want to keep them out of the criminal justice center, make sure that they get their mental health support that they need, that they deal potentially with some of the addictions that they may have, that we assist and try to find them homes or housing, because housing is and has proven to be a foundation of a safe community. when we looked at the overall results of our community safety, it said that 64% of our community is satisfied with the Barrie Police Service, and that they have confidence in what we do, and they feel safe as citizens and pedestrians. So this is a stat that we always continue to develop and work upon. And so if there's anything that you feel that we need to do, make sure that you go to our website and let us know, or if we have a private conversation, I'm always interested in seeing how we can improve. At the end of last year in 2019, we went to City Council and we secured our funding for 2020. So this is what has been approved by the board and by Council on what services we offer to the community. So it cost in Barrie just over $56 million to run the programs that we do with the Barrie Police Service. We have been fortunate that we do receive some grants at the provincial level, but I will note that for 2019 and 2020, we were $920,000 less in provincial funding than we have received in previous years. So we've had to adjust some of the services and some of the programs that we offer, and we've had to seek additional municipal funding to support our service. So that is an overview of the Barrie Police Service, but I'm always much more interested in hearing questions from everybody in the group, if anybody has any questions. Yes, sir.
You showed 11% in human traffic.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Is that abnormally high?
We have, I don't know if you recall, last year the Barrie Police Service was involved in a labor human trafficking. So traditionally we think of human trafficking more in the sex trade, but this was a labor human trafficking. So we have now developed a unit within our service to address the human trafficking. We are on the 400 series highway, so we were ripe to have that sex trafficking that we see across the province, across our country. So we are focusing attention in that area. And we work closely with the OPP, and there's specific programs that run throughout the year to touch base with those that potentially may be human trafficked, to ensure that we give them the opportunity if they want to get out of that. So those that are involved in human trafficking, we look at them to provide support so they can remove themselves from that environment, but we're also laying charges to those that are the organizers behind human trafficking. Yes?
You commented on the IT specialists that you have
Yes.
internally.
Yes.
But there's quite a bit of crime, I think, in terms of what goes on the internet and people trying to steal money from others.
Yes.
How is that managed at city level, or is it pitched out to the OPP or other city?
We have an internet unit so we have an IT unit that supports the work that we need to do internally from all of our systems that we have. But we have expert technicians and investigators that look at the crimes that are committed through technology. So there has been significant change, and we have our geographic areas in the city of Barrie, but from a technical crime perspective, there's no barrier. There's no boundaries. They have no geographic. It is international, and we have individuals that focus in on exploitation against children. So we have specialists in that area. We have specialists that look at all of the devices that are seized during, for example, search warrants or investigators. So we have experts in different areas. Some are our sworn members, they're police officers, and some are technical experts too that are civilian members. So, but we can't do it alone. We do require support from the RCMP, support from the OPP, and there are multiple joint investigations when we're dealing with technical crimes. Yes.
Yes, cannabis is a new thing, of course.
Yes.
Well, legally.
Legal.
No way. And I was just wondering, like, I know with the ride check, I guess the alcohol breathalyzers in the air, in the breath. But if, say, now that the gummy bears are going to be laced, I like gummy bears too, but they're going to be laced with cannabis, then, and swallowed, I guess, eaten. If someone was over the limit in that, is there a thing that can determine if they were stopped that they've had too much?
The devices that we have purchased through the Barrie Police Service, we have our traditional alcohol detective devices that are at the roadside, or the breathalyzers that if somebody is arrested and they're brought to our facilities or tested. The devices that we have right now for cannabis and cocaine, those are the two drugs that are tested for. They're saliva based. So that would detect things such as the edibles that are going to be approved. But some of the challenges that we're seeing, not just within the city of Barrie, but we're seeing it across the province, across the country, is those that are making the decisions not only to drink, but utilize either an opiate or a prescription or cannabis. We're seeing a combination of that impairment too. And there's not a specific device that measures that yet. So I think with science and development and technology, we will see something shortly that can measure it. But how we overcome that is we have experts within our service that are drug recognition experts, and they have specific training that's highly sought after, and they are be able to detect it from observations and from their training, and they have certifications, so those skills are being utilized, and those are are going to court also. Oh, shortbreads. How did you guys know? Shortbreads and Nynamo bars and butter tarts.
I have never heard anyone say anything negative against you, yet you are doing a fabulous job leading these officers that you have here, including Anne. She was
Yes.
you had great backup.
Okay. Thank you very much. And I do appreciate those words of kindness, but it is about a service. I get to work with great people every day who are dedicated to making this a safe city, but we live in a phenomenal city, so I think we're all around very, very fortunate. So thank you.